Hey guys, welcome back to more relationship stories. In this video, my spoiled sister demands I let her entitled brats continuously use my pool. At some point, they even stole my property and I finally had enough. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. The title story starts like this. My sister Tiffany is the human equivalent of a perfectly ripe, juicy peach on the outside. Beautiful, charming, seemingly sweet. Inside though, she is a rotten pit of entitlement and selfishness. And her kids? Well, they are miniature versions of the pit. 3 of them, Brad, Chad, and the creatively named Brianna. They range in age from 7 to 12 and they are all equally terrible. Now, I've always tried to be a good brother. I've bailed Tiffany out of countless jams, covered for her with our parents, even loaned her money I knew I would never see again. But when she started demanding that I let her kids use my pool every single day, all day long, I knew I had to draw a line in the sand, or rather, the chlorinated water. It started innocently enough. Hey, could the kids swim over at your place today? It's so hot and they are driving me crazy. Sure, no problem. I like kids and my pool is a good size. But today quickly morphed into every day, and not just for a few hours. We are talking from the moment the sun peaked over the horizon until well after dinner. They would leave wet towels strewn across my patio furniture, empty chip bags floating in the skimmer, and a general air of chaos in their wake. I tried to be polite about it at first. Hey Tiffany, maybe we could set up a schedule or something? Like Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, she scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, the kids need to cool off, besides you barely even use your pool. What's the big deal here? That's where she was wrong. I work from home and often take afternoon dips to clear my head. Her kids constantly being there made that impossible, and then came the disappearing acts. Small things at first, a candy bar from the pantry, a few dollars from the change jar. I brushed it off as my own forgetfulness, but then it escalated. A video game vanished from my living room, a pair of expensive sunglasses went missing from my bedroom, and even a diamond ring I got from my late grandmother that I loved and cherished dearly. I knew deep down who the culprits were. I confronted Tiffany. Your kids are stealing from me. She laughed, a high-pitched, dismissive sound. Oh, come on, they're just kids. They probably just borrowed them. Don't be such a tightwad. My blood was boiling. These were not borrowed toys. These were items being taken without permission, and Tiffany's blatant disregard for her children's thievery infuriated me. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I installed a few discreet security cameras around the house, focusing on the pool area, the living room and my bedroom. It was not long before I caught the little brats red-handed. Brad stuffing a handful of my video games into his backpack, Chad pocketing a 20 from my wallet, Brianna sneaking a pair of my headphones into her beach bag, and the kicker? Tiffany was watching the whole thing, occasionally even pointing out more valuable items for them to grab. I was livid. I compiled the security footage, burned it onto a DVD, and marched straight over to Tiffany's house. I slapped the DVD down on her coffee table. Explain this, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Her face went white as a sheet. She stammered, trying to come up with some excuse, but the evidence was irrefutable. I can explain, she started, but I cut her off. No, you can't. You've been enabling your kids to steal from me, and I am done. I'm pressing charges. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You're what? You cannot be serious. They're just kids. They are thieves, I corrected her, and you're an accomplice. I left her sputtering in her living room and went straight to the police station. I filed a report, showed them the video evidence, and explained the situation. The officer, a kind woman named Officer Diaz, was sympathetic. She assured me they would take the matter seriously. The next few weeks then were crazy. The police interviewed Tiffany and her kids. The kids of course tried to deny everything, but the video footage did not lie. Tiffany tried to play the victim, claiming I was overreacting and trying to ruin her family's reputation. But Officer Diaz saw right through her act. They were charged with petty theft. Tiffany was charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor. It was not a walk in the park for them. The legal process was a bit of a headache. I had to provide detailed accounts of the stolen items, their value, and the dates they went missing. I also had to testify in court, which was nerve-wracking, but ultimately satisfying. Seeing Tiffany squirm under oath as I presented the undeniable evidence was a small victory in itself. The judge, a stern but fair man, did not buy Tiffany's crocodile tears. He lectured her on the importance of teaching her children right from wrong and the consequences of enabling their bad behavior. The fallout from the incident was significant. Tiffany and I have not spoken since. Our parents, initially skeptical of my actions, eventually came around after seeing the video evidence. They were disappointed in Tiffany and her kids, but relieved that I had taken a stand. It was a tough decision to press charges against my own sister and her children, but I knew it was the right thing to do. They needed to learn a lesson, and Tiffany needed a wake-up call. It was not about revenge, it was about accountability, it was about protecting myself and my property from their entitled behavior. And in the end, it was about hoping that somewhere down the line they would understand the consequences of their actions and make a change for the better. One evening, a few months after the court case concluded, I received a letter. It was from Tiffany. My heart pounded in my chest as I tore open the envelope. The letter was short and, surprisingly, it was not filled with the usual accusations and justifications. Instead, it was an apology, a real genuine apology. She wrote about how she had been in denial about her children's behavior, how she had let her own insecurities and need for their affection blind her to their wrongdoings. She admitted that she had been wrong, that I had every right to be angry, and that she was grateful for the wake-up call. She also mentioned that the kids had been attending therapy and were showing signs of improvement. They had written me letters too, short awkward apologies filled with misspelled words and crayon drawings. I won't lie, reading those letters brought tears to my eyes. It was a small step, but a significant one. It gave me a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for reconciliation down the line. I was not ready to jump back into a relationship with them, not yet, but the door which I had slammed shut in anger was now cracked open, a sliver of light peeking through. Life went back to normal, or as normal as it could be after such a dramatic family feud. I continued working from home, enjoying the peace and quiet of my house and occasionally dipping in my pool. Now free from uninvited guests, of course. I started to reconnect with old friends, focusing on building healthier relationships with people who respected my boundaries and appreciated me for who I was. One sunny afternoon, while I was lounging by the pool with a book, I heard a timid knock on the door. It was Officer Diaz. She had stopped by to check in to see how I was doing. We chatted for a while about the case, about Tiffany and the kids, and about life in general. She told me that she had seen a positive change in the kids and that they seemed genuinely remorseful and were actively working to make amends. You know, she said, sometimes tough love is the best kind of love. So Reddit, did I go too far? I mean, pressing charges against my own sister and her kids is a heavy decision. Was I an a-hole for dealing with the situation the way I did? Should I have just handled it differently instead of getting the police involved? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Do you think OP was the a-hole here or not? A user in the comments said, no, you're definitely not the a-hole. Your sister and her kids were completely out of line. You gave them plenty of chances to change their behavior and they kept taking advantage of you. You did what you had to do to protect yourself and your property. Comment number 2, you went above and beyond to be a good sibling. You even set boundaries politely at first, but they just ignored you. Pressing charges was probably the wake-up call they needed. Standing up for your rights was the right move. Comment number 3, you caught them red-handed and your sister was enabling their behavior. It's not like you went straight to the police, you tried talking to her first. She left you no choice. Don't feel bad about it, they need to learn that actions have consequences. Comment number 4, honestly, your story read like a textbook case of how entitled behavior can spiral out of control. You just protected yourself and now they are learning to take responsibility for their actions. That's not being an a-hole, that's just teaching an important life lesson. Comment number 5, your sister literally stood by as her kids stole from you. You handled it with more patience than most people would have. Filing charges was harsh but necessary. Sometimes you have to be the bad guy to bring about real change. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. It's the most wonderful time of the year, the season of giving, where we get to spend time with loved ones, sip hot cocoa, open gifts and decorate with lots of lights. It's also a chaotic time where we have to deal with pesky HOAs who like to steal the Christmas joy right out from under you. This past year has been a monument of pain as my annoying HOA decided to ruin what would have been a great Christmas into a nightmarish hell akin to getting a pile of coal dumped on your head, or only receiving that as a gift. It all happened around November 15th when my husband and I decided to put up a very large Christmas tree outside our townhome in our front yard. And by large, I mean this thing was massive. It could hold a few Keebler elves in it. We had heard that that other neighbors were putting out Christmas trees this year too, it was a crazy time in our neighborhood. Lots of people had lost loved ones, families had been ripped apart, and to top it all off, our HOA was getting more aggressive with their fines and fees imposed on us. Our neighbors down to the end of the subdivision wanted to go all out and decorate. It was somewhat of an unspoken contest to see who could have the best tree. We did not know that ours would be the biggest though, and that our HOA would start fining us upwards of $500 daily just for having the tree in our yard at an earlier time than stated in the contract. My husband Jim and I thought it was ridiculous when we opened a letter one day, sipping hot cocoa and reading the West Virginia local news in the town where we lived. When we read it, we were shocked at the language. They had already sent us a bill for the $500 and said if we don't pay it, they would take us to court. My husband looked at me in dismay. "Can you believe this?" he said. "After all the money we give to them, they really want to fine us for having a Christmas tree out before the designated time? That's ludicrous." I looked at him with graven eyes that seemed to melt into his kind of spirit. I could see the frustration and I was getting anxious about it too. Normally, Jim was my rock and we just did not know how we were gonna overcome this battle with the HOA. A few weeks go by and we start receiving more letters, only this time we opened a very large envelope with documents containing papers on the HOA suing us and the daily fines leading up to this point. I was bewildered. "What the hell, Jim? They are suing us!" I screamed from the living room after opening it. "These people are claiming that our tree is not only too big, but that it was put up before the date when everyone is allowed to put holiday decorations up." Jim came running down the stairs and grabbed the envelope from my hands. He had a nervous look on his face. "We cannot afford this. This is outrageous," he yelled. "You gotta be kidding me. It says they are also fining us $500 daily too. And on top of that, suing us. Unbelievable." Suddenly, our holiday spirit died that day. What was supposed to be a warm, inviting, and generally good time during the holidays just so happened to be a time where someone comes and dumps a load of bad juju on your winter wonderland. I wanted to cry, but the tears would not flow. And then I got angry. I looked outside our window where our tree sat perfectly, with its big shiny ornaments and giant bright lights glimmering through our window. "I'm gonna make these people pay," I thought to myself and slammed my fist on the couch. No more Mrs. Nice Santa Claus. I went over to the kitchen drawer and pulled out the HOA calendar. They were having a meeting right here in our neighborhood office and it turned out the HOA president Ken was gonna be there. Well, he turned out to be a Ken, or more like a Chad in my opinion. He was handsome, put together, and generally looked pretty fake. He even had a fake spray tan and an ugly Christmas sweater he wore to the meeting. I know this because I showed up in my own holiday garb and went in with guns blazing. I stood up when Ken asked everyone for any opinions and thoughts or questions pertaining to the neighborhood. I brought up the fines about our Christmas tree and everyone looked at me like I was some sort of Looney Tune. I thought it was strange, but later came to realize that it gets even worse. After I sat down and voiced my opinion, Ken ended the meeting abruptly. I stopped him out in the hallway and gave him my 2 cents. "This is not fair that we got fined and you are suing us for having a Christmas tree. This is supposed to be the season of giving and receiving, not collecting and hoarding," I yelled. Ken looked at me with a sneer on his face. "You know I can fine you even more. It's just that I'm nice for not doing so, especially given the fact that you are violating even more of our terms." I looked at him in disgust. After going back and forth, I finally broke down and cried in front of him. He gave me an evil look and walked out the door. Later, the fines kept coming. Our hearts were breaking, and this evil elf, if you wanted to call him, that was doing a great job of ruining our holiday season. We even cancelled plans with friends and family because we were so wrapped up in this monstrous thing. I did not know what to do, and neither did Jim. I called up a few neighbors though and got word that they were not fined at all. What's even crazier is that they never got sued. No letters, no evil sneers, nothing. It felt like we were the butt of an ugly joke, and we were. It felt like the HOA president was Krampus who wanted to cramp our style, and sure enough he was. We just wondered why we were the only ones targeted, and it seemed like discrimination. I called Jim on my way to work one day, all fed up. "I think we need to go to court with these guys," I yelled. "I'm not letting them take us down." I began to research HOA property bylaws and standards. I even went as far as to consult with an attorney who dealt with all this nasty stuff. He had represented a number of clients in our hometown and was glad to help us. I needed more money though, so Jim and I decided that it was in our best interest to pull from our savings what little we had to fight off these HOA jerks and prove that the Christmas spirit is still alive. It was more than just a tree, it was the principle of the matter. They were wrecking our lives and we were not gonna let them stop us. We researched some more and found out that we could do some hefty damage by taking their sorry asses to small claims court. We knew we could stuff their stocking with a little bit of holiday mayhem, given the right time and right place. And sure enough, we did. In court, the judge ruled in our favor, stating that the tree rules were not enforced equally. I told the judge, we have neighbors who never got fined and they are sitting in their houses right now, enjoying their holidays while we are out in the cold left, wondering why. The judge looked at us with a sad face and proceeded to smile. I understand, ma'am. This happens a lot here in this town. You cannot keep somebody down though. Going to reward you this case as this is unlawful. All fines and penalties shall be rewarded back to you with the fines dismissed. Case closed. We were relieved and we ended up getting all our money back. We had spent most of it and dipped into our savings just to pay for these unlawful fines. We did not even get to spend much for Christmas this year, and on top of that, we were miserable until the judge ruled in our favor. The bills then stopped coming, we got a nice fat paycheck, and even more, we found out some dirty news about the HOA president. I'd forgotten to mention that this president went way overboard trying to make up to us and trying to kiss the ass of the judge so that he could get this way. We had found footage of the president stalking our neighbors, looking at their trees and taking photos of their yards. What is even worse was that during the trial he was often seen ignoring the judge and yelling out of nowhere trying to get his way. We caught some footage on our Ring camera outside our door of the president taking photos of our trees right before the trial. We presented it to the judge and we think that helped our case. During one of the moments in the trial, the judge played our video showcasing the president having a meltdown in front of our townhome. This is not right. I'm photographing this right now and making a video so that all of you who think you can do this in this neighborhood just know that you'll be punished. He was screaming and kicking the snow around like an evil elf on cocaine. We and the other neighbors caught the footage on our Ring cameras and our neighbors pulled up some photos on theirs as well. During the trial, we found word that the president was trying to run for local office in our town. What's even worse, the video also showed the HOA president going on a hate-filled racist tirade while vandalizing our property and messing with our mailbox. I forgot to mention that we had decorated various parts of our property to prepare for the holiday season, and our mailbox was one of those. The HOA president made himself look like a clown. This is gonna get even better, I told Jim. When we pulled all the footage from the neighbors, we sat down and created a TikTok short of our crazy HOA president acting like an a-hole. It's good all our neighbors caught him on their Ring cameras as well, because this thing went viral. The next day we had over 500,000 views. It ended up damaging his campaign and he lost the election. As I sit outside sipping my hot cocoa and chatting with other neighbors enjoying the beautiful Christmas tree, I'm delighted to tell you that this holiday season was wrapped a bit differently in more ways than one. It was like opening a box of chocolate and getting to savor the good and the bad. But hey, that's what life is all about, and from here on out, the HOA stopped harassing us. The president lost his campaign, was officially fired from his HOA position, and we got a new HOA who set up better policies concerning Christmas trees. Jim came outside as I was chatting with one of the neighbors. "Honey, I think next year we need to get an even bigger tree." He laughed jokingly and I stared at him, rolling my eyes and smiling. "Come over here and take a photo with me," I said. I took out my phone, snapped a selfie of us and sent it to all our neighbors as our Christmas card. It said, "Happy holidays from us to you. May your tree be even bigger and brighter and earlier than this time forth and into the new year." And yeah, ripe stars, I'm curious, have you ever had any issues with your HOA during the Christmas time? Or in general, have you ever dealt with entitled people during the holiday season? I would love to hear your stories in the comments, so please feel free to share. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I am an extremely fortunate person, and one of the easiest ways to explain that is me owning more than one property. So I got a home that I live in for most of the year and then a secondary property that my family uses mainly on the weekends. It's only a 3-hour drive away and gives us access to beaches, so we love spending family time there. The only downside is that our neighbor Karen notices the pattern of us never being home on the weekends and tries to take advantage of that. Karen hates us because, in her own words, we are greedy and refuse to help out less fortunate people, aka her. We give plenty of money and donations to charities and people that truly need help. Karen, however, is not poor and well off like most people in our neighborhood. She thinks that she is entitled to more than she can have though, and her targets seem to have locked onto me and my house. For one thing, she has been trying for years to get the area rezoned so that part of my property magically becomes hers. Our property is a bit bigger, and she always tells people that part of my property is actually hers and she is just nice and lets the fence be way onto her side. Of course, no amount of lying or complaining was actually gonna change anything. She then moved on to trying to send in complaints with the town about us doing things like hearing fighting or stuff flying out of our windows. All reports of this ended up with nothing because she always tended to claim that we were doing this on like a Sunday morning or something, when we were more often than not even at our other home. One day though, she had the nerve to ask us to borrow our house for a party one weekend because she needed the larger amount of land to accommodate all of her guests. Now, if we were friends with her, I would have considered letting her party spill over to our lawn or something. It would not really hurt anything if I knew I could trust a person, but this was Karen after all. I told her that she couldn't, and I never found anything else out about that party, and a few months passed. Cue one Saturday when we were all leaving in the morning to spend what was meant to be a beautiful weekend out at the beach. I say morning, but getting 2 young kids up and out while making sure everything is packed means that we really did not get out until after lunch. Then, about an hour into the drive, my 4-year-old said that she wasn't feeling so well before being sick all over the backseat. We were not about to drive another 2 hours and away from her doctors if she was this sick. We have had some scares with her in the past, so when she suddenly doesn't feel well, we don't really mess around anymore. We turned around to go back home after getting her some crackers to nibble on, which seemed to help her. After driving an hour back, we see that the entire block is filled with parked cars. That was fine, but what was not okay was the fact that our driveway was both filled and blocked with cars. Not that it was even the first thing we noticed, since our lawn was also filled with people standing around eating and drinking. It was a lot to take in at once, and with a sick daughter, I did not know exactly where to start. So then I left my kids in the car with my husband to go and see what was happening. Getting to the front door, I could see that it wasn't locked and people were inside of my house. Music was playing and there was just a full-on party going on. Some people were even swimming in my pool, being half naked and drinking cheap whiskey. I stopped the first person I saw and asked them what the hell was going on here. They were confused and told me that I was at Karen's 50th birthday party. I was fuming and demanded that somebody tell me where Karen was right away so I could sort this out. She was in my kitchen opening a bottle of wine that I knew right away came from my basement collection and was being saved. Me? What the hell do you think you're doing in my house? How did you even get in here? Note that people were all around and listening to this entire conversation. Karen, what are you talking about? I live here obviously, and I'm throwing a party. Hey everybody, this is the lady that lives next door to me. I think she's a little mad that she wasn't invited for all the free food, heh. She started to give off the fakest laugh like she was trying to be elite or something. Me, don't even start trying to make up lies. I want you and everybody else out of my house within the next 5 minutes. Also, my driveway emptied and cleared. Karen, how dare you? You break into my house for my party and then try to take it over. I should call the police and have you arrested for just walking in like this. Me, go ahead Karen, I dare you. She actually had the balls to go and call the police on me for breaking in, as she said, to my own home. They arrived and she immediately started telling them that I was crashing her party and wanted me removed from the property. Since everybody else was saying that Karen was the birthday girl and throwing the party, they were leaning towards believing her. Me, can I just ask if this is her house? Why is this address on my license then? And my husband's, who is sitting in the car? Also, if you go upstairs, my children's names are on their doors and my room has a stack of mail, all with my name on it. Also, I'm sure if you look at any of her info, it will show that she lives next door and not here. The police took my license and had to basically force Karen to show hers. Then she had a story about us switching homes or something and never bothering to get any kind of formal paperwork, of course, signed. That clearly was not gonna work, as proving you own your home is pretty easy. With the bills and mortgage being in my name and modern technology making accessing them only takes a few swipes of a finger. Karen, well, she said I could have a party here. She does not even use this house on the weekends, which means I get squatter rights over it. Just tell her to go to another house and then when the party is done, she can come back. Me, is there any chance I can press charges for her breaking into my house? Police, absolutely ma'am. Karen, F you. You should not have even been here. She grabs a knife out of my knife block, which ends up being a pretty big chef knife. She then tries to step towards me with it over her head like she was in some really cheesy horror movie. She did not get more than a step in before the police screamed for her to drop the weapon and put her in handcuffs. Seriously, she was dumb enough to pull a knife on me with police standing right there. The police arrested her and told everybody else that the party was over and they were all trespassing on private property. I obviously was not gonna try and have any guests arrested because I doubt any of them were in on it. Karen was taken away by police though while yelling that I was a selfish and greedy neighbor. I wanted to make sure that nothing like this could happen again, so I got a restraining order on Karen to keep her away from my home and my family. The place was also a mess by the way, but with my sick daughter that was the least of my concern. I wanted everybody gone so I could take care of what was luckily just a 48-hour stomach bug. I hope Karen had a great 50th birthday sitting in the station waiting for somebody to bail her ass out. And yeah, ripe stars, it is just absolutely fascinating how entitled these people are. It would feel so awkward for me to just break into someone's home and then even have the audacity to have your birthday party there. But I guess these Karens just feel no shame. If you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much. The next one is an amazing revenge story. For background, my older sister, who I will call Beth, is married to her high school sweetheart, who I will call Greg. Beth is a pretty laid-back person, but she has one hot-button trigger that causes her to have zero chill. It is anyone treating her beloved Craig poorly. Craig is very quiet and kind and just in general a mild-mannered, good-natured guy who is not great at standing up for himself. So he often attracts bad actors who view him as an easy mark, and because he always assumes that other people have good intentions, he's not great at realizing when he's being mistreated. Beth is usually pretty relaxed about things, but she will basically turn into a howling, vengeance-seeking banshee if anyone takes advantage of Greg. Which brings us to 2 to 3 years ago. Craig works a white-collar job remotely, but he is an amateur artist and craftsman as a hobby. He does wood carving, a little bit of light metal work and 2D art, mainly pencil sketches and pen and ink illustrations. He joined an artist collective and makerspace where he could work on these hobbies around like-minded people, and he absolutely loved it. Whenever I hung out with him and Beth around this time, Craig would excitedly talk about the space and his projects there with infectious enthusiasm. His eyes were practically beaming out of his head whenever it came up. Beth joined too to learn and improve on her own hobby of fiber arts, mainly weaving and dyeing, but she was way less into it than Greg. Sometime after this, the president of the makerspace stepped down. It was essentially a volunteer position, though it came with a small and mostly symbolic stipend. Since the makerspace had no actual staff, being president of the makerspace was a huge undertaking that involved being a one-man show for everything for a start, coordinating with the board, keeping day-to-day operations going, and chasing the grants that kept the lights on. The current president just couldn't do it anymore with his full-time job and announced his intention to vacate the role. Craig had to come to love the makerspace, and he figured he had the resources to be an effective president. His job is entirely remote and deliverables based. He can work whatever hours he wants as long as he is meeting his objectives. So he figured he could work out of the makerspace on his laptop and be available there if anyone needed him, and then do the heavy lifting of the role outside of work hours, so he threw his hat in the ring. Enter Jamie, a recent industrial design grad. Jamie was known to be flaky and very dramatic, but he had been a member of the makerspace for a couple of years. almost as long as it had existed, and he felt entitled to be handed the presidency because he had seniority. He lost his damn mind when he heard that Craig had the audacity to go for the same role and complained to several members about how Craig was massively overstepping. This got back to Craig, who did not really take it seriously, and it also got back to Beth, who of course was already irritated that Jamie was crap stirring but kept it to herself. Long story short, Jamie won the member vote by a small margin, which Craig was very gracious about. Craig congratulated Jamie on the victory and then settled back into business as usual. Jamie was not so gracious though. He was enraged that Craig had gotten so many votes and made it known to everyone that he was trying to figure out who had voted for Craig and that they would pay. Many of the members who had voted for Jamie passively because he had been around forever and they didn't really know Craig were shocked by this behavior and started privately expressing regret to each other, but then it gets worse. The Makerspace had always offered members the perk of sponsoring workshops, meetups and classes that anyone, members or non-members, could attend. All you had to do was sign up for the space on a first-come, first-served basis and kick up 20% of any profits to the Makerspace if you charged a fee. Jamie had started preemptively cancelling classes and workshops sponsored by anyone on his crap list by blocking off all available reservations. During the regular time, certain classes would be held. So, Craig had traditionally sponsored a popular casting workshop on Wednesday evenings, and suddenly, all Wednesday evenings were booked solid before the sign-up sheet was even available. He tried switching to Thursday, but after just one rescheduled workshop, suddenly Thursday evenings were out too. So then he tried Tuesdays, but because it was so early in the week, no one could come. Craig was bummed, but was still too good-natured to realize that Jamie was intentionally sabotaging him out of spite, despite a righteously angry Beth trying to paint the picture for him of what was going on. Beth was really pissed. However, she was not Benji pissed yet. Not until Jamie selectively told the people on his crap list that member fees were going up by almost double. He presented this as a Makerspace-wide policy, but he made one crucial error. Somehow, Jamie never picked up on Craig and Beth being married, probably because he was never around both of them at the same time. So that's why Beth flew under his radar, and he did not raise her member fees, just Craig's and some of Craig's known friends, which confirmed to her that he was intentionally retaliating against Craig. At this point, Beth had steam coming out of her ears and went to go talk to the board, since they have the power to cite or even throw out the president. They were uneasy about what she told them, but they said the president was technically allowed to set member fees and they would keep an eye on things. Beth did not really believe the board that they'd be keeping an eye on things because Jamie was already dropping the ball all over the place and the board was not making a peep over it. He wanted to be president because of the prestige, but he was never willing to do the work, so he just didn't do it and things were falling apart. The Makerspace was getting late notices on unpaid bills, basic maintenance of the space wasn't getting done, materials were not being restocked as they ran out, and the record keeping was non-existent. It got so bad that the previous president, who had stepped down because he couldn't handle the time commitment anymore, who had run the Makerspace from its inception, quit as a member altogether because he was so saddened and disgusted by how bad things had gotten. He had put his blood, sweat and tears into this place and stepped down from a role he treasured because he believed it was in the best interest of the organization. And now he had to watch Jamie run this place he loved into the ground out of sheer laziness. Craig was also losing his excitement over the Makerspace because he no longer had the space or resources to do the things he enjoyed there. Beth at this point had gone from furiously angry to strategically angry. Suspecting that Jamie was being shady in more ways than one, she spent a few days being friendly to Jamie and sucking up to him, and then sprung on him the offer to help with the organization's bookkeeping and records. Still not realizing that she was Craig's wife, but knowing that she worked as a project manager in her day job, Jamie basically saw a chance to get some skilled work done at zero effort to himself, and he happily agreed. And then gave her access to the Makerspace Google Sheets, but not the most high-tech operation. And then for a little while, Beth bided her time, bringing the financial accounts up to date and continuing to be diabolically friendly to Jamie. After a while of this, she calmly pulled together 6 copies of documents comparing the official organizational income that Jamie was reporting to her with the actual income, which Jamie was completely unaware she was tracking. These documents prove that Jamie was not only skimming money off the top of class and workshop fees, but was actively stealing money from the grants the makerspace was receiving, which is highly illegal. Beth gave the 6 board members her impeccably compiled proof of what was happening. Almost immediately, the board fired Jamie and issued a lifetime ban from the makerspace. They were afraid of losing their grants if news came out about the gross misappropriation, so they did not report Jamie to the authorities. But instead they gave him 48 hours to return the stolen funds, the implication being that they would report him if he didn't. He panicked and complied, selling his car quickly to do it and scrounging up the difference in a ton of quick loans from friends, many of whom were makerspace members not aware of what was going on. And no, he never paid them back. He is now persona non grata with all of his former friends, and while he still has a clean criminal record, word traveled pretty far in the local artist community, which means he was blacklisted from most of the industrial design jobs in the area and could not use his degree if he wanted to stay in town. As far as Beth and Craig knew, he moved away about 6 months after all this went down, but they have not kept up with him and don't know where he is. The Makerspace board realized their setup was bad, so instead of a single president, they restructured to have a panel of volunteer officers running the operation. Craig is one of them and has happily thrown himself back into woodworking and metal casting. Beth still helps out with the books. And yeah, Ripe Stars, to be honest, I wish more would have happened to that entitled douchebag, but in the end, I guess it's also a good result that he got exiled from the community, so to say. However, sometimes in these stories you wish that there would be even worse consequences for these entitled people. Either way, please let me know in the comments whether you enjoyed this story or not. I always appreciate your feedback. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.